Okay, so we're going to do some training on iridology. I felt the Lord really highlighted this to me a couple of months ago, actually, and I'd known about it, I'd heard about it, but you know, you hear about a lot of things, you don't really know how great it's going to be or what the accuracy is or if it's weirdo stuff or whatever. So, but the Lord clearly highlighted this to me, and I got excited about it, showed me a couple of scriptures, and researched it and went to go train with Dr. Bernard Jensen. Was the pioneer of iridology in America. And he had 6 sons, I think it was. He had quite a few children, and none of his children really took it on. But one of the gals he worked with ended up marrying one of his sons. And so it's his daughter-in-law, who is now, her name's Dr. Ellen Tart Jensen. So that's who we trained with. And she took Bernard Jensen's 50 years of research, and she added her 25 years of research, and now we are where we're at, you know, today with iridology. So we're just going to kind of go through this training PowerPoint that was given to us by Dr. Ellen, and we'll talk about what iridology is. It's the study of the color, pigmentations, and structure of the iris of the eye as they relate through reflex response to genetic strengths and deficiencies of the body systems. So you can tell everything going on in a person's eye with their genetic makeup on both sides of their family. The right eye is the dad's side of the family. The left eye is the mom's side of the family. You can see stuff going on genetically as you look down the line. You can look at grandma and mom and daughter, and you can see things passed down through the generations. The iris is the colored part of the eye. Okay. I don't know if we're going to do too much anatomy, but just the basics are the iris is the colored part of the eye. The sclera is your whites of the eye. And then, of course, that black dot right in the middle is the pupil that just dilates for light. So there's a side view of an iris, a brown iris. As an iridologist, we learn to read and understand the meanings of the patterns that are located in the iris of the eye. No two eyes are alike, so that's really cool. God's an amazing creator and designer, just like no two snowflakes are alike, no two blades of grass are alike, no two people's fingerprints are alike, no two people's eyes are alike. So literally every color, every marking, everything going on in the eye tells us information. It helps us to know and understand the language of the iris as it relays messages concerning the health and well-being of the body. This is really interesting. There's basically 2 iris colors. There's only 2 iris colors in the world. You're either brown or blue. Now, we talk about 3 eye colors. We call it a mixed eye. It's really a combination of genetic history of people crossing blue eyes and brown eyes and making more of mixed eyes. But really the true colors of eyes of anyone in the world is either a true blue or a true brown. But we do use the term mixed as well. So the way she describes it is there's basically 2 eye colors. One's blue, one's brown. When there's a genetic mixture, we call it a mixed eye. Okay? With the naked eye, you see people that look like they have green eyes, hazel eyes, gray eyes. You might have heard that term, steel gray eyes, light brown eyes. In iridology, when you look at it up close, you can find out the true iris color. And I've already done a few with people, and I'm like, hey, do you know your eyes are blue? And he's like, my eyes aren't blue. They're blue. You can't tell until maybe you look up close. Me, for example, if you look at my baby pictures, I had very blue eyes. And they're not so blue anymore. Sometimes they look blue, sometimes they look hazel, sometimes they look green, and that's because of stuff going on in my body. So it's pretty fascinating. So color tells us a lot about their constitution. And so here's a blue, a true blue. And a blue iris is called a lymphatic type. Now what we have to understand about the eye is most, not all, but the majority of what we're looking at is genetics. So in other words, here's a fascinating way to think about this. The eye and most of what the eye is composed of, the coloring, the markings, the pigments, all the different things we're going to talk about are formed in the womb before the child's born. Mm-hmm. So literally, like when they're born, the genetics is right there in the eye. And because of genetic history of different people groups, like blue eyes, you think traditionally like northern culture, Sweden, those kind of places. They had a different lifestyle, different environment, different foods, different level of sunshine. And then you think the darker eyes, you think more African, and of course there's been a lot of mixture, but a lot of the patterns in the eye and the colors relate to those people's lifestyles over the course of time. So there's actually genetic tendencies that people are predisposed to just based on the color of their eye. So just a blue eye, just having a true blue eye means you're already prone to having lymphatic system issues, lymphatic congestion, kidney issues, potential joint pain, joint problems, skin issues, just because of genetically a weaker lymph system because of the genetics of people of your history that have had blue eyes. Does that kind of make sense? Okay. This is a mixed eye. So you might look at this and you might say, well, that's a brown eye. It looks brown, but it's not. It's a mixed eye. It's what we call a biliary eye. And these people are really prone to liver, gallbladder issues, liver weakness, liver congestion. It's called a biliary type. Biliary as in bile. And then, so you see, well, that looks like a brown eye, but wait till you see a brown eye. That's a brown eye. So brown eyes are dark brown, true brown. This is called a hematogenic eye. Hema means blood. So they are prone to blood issues, blood disorders, sticky, thick blood, anemia, just blood-related issues. Okay? It's really interesting. I had a gal in my office just the other day who was young, and she had a clot, and she was a young gal, and she was clotting. And the doctor had her on warfarin and all kinds of really heavy blood-thinning drugs. And she had a true brown eye. She's from the Middle East. She's got a really true brown eye, and I mean, she's having blood issues. It's pretty fascinating. The anatomy of the iris, we will not go over this because there's a whole lot of anatomy to the eye because God is very creative. We're always learning. This is a cool little picture of the eye. This is somebody with high cholesterol levels. It's called a corneal arcus. We also can call it a cholesterol ring. What's neat to know about iridology is it's so real and so true and so helpful that they've actually changed the language over to medical language so that ophthalmologists who are open to this around the world can speak eye language, and it makes sense to everybody. So they used to call it just a cholesterol ring because it was a buildup of fatty deposits of cholesterol. Now they call it a corneal arcus because that's the more medical term. So I think it's neat that they're doing that. Dr. Ellen actually travels to Japan and Korea and all these different places and trains medical doctors, ophthalmologists, because other countries are much more open to this thing, and more people here in the U.S. are too. The iris constitutions. So if you have really tight woven fibers, it's called a neurogenic type, and it means that you have a good constitution. You're resilient. So you see how tight those fibers are woven together. This is a subtype. So there's the two main types, blue and brown, and then of course we call the mixed biliary, so there's technically three. But then there's what we call subtypes. And one of the subtypes is called anxiety tetanic. And anxiety tetanic are these rings that form around the outside of the eye. And again, this is genetic. And what this is this is actually a buckling of the fibers of the eyes, specifically related to nerves and nervous tension. So a lot of people in their family have a lot of anxiety, nervous system issues, stress, and that, again, that passes down. So that's anxiety tetanic, those rings. Another subtype is called polyglandular. So we'll talk a little bit more about these. So if I go back to this eye, you didn't see a lot of those. We call them lacunae. They're little defects in the eye. This one was pretty solid. But then you go to this one, you see all of these, they're defects, they're lacunae. And what that means is that's a genetic weakness in that part of the eye, and each one of those corresponds to a different glandular organ in the human body. So this person has a lot of genetic issues going on in this eye. This is a left eye. Is it a left eye? No, it's a right eye. So there's a lot of issues going on. We call it a daisy petal. There's actually an emotional component. We won't get into it, but people with the daisy petal usually are very artistic, creative type of people. So there's the, oh my gosh, I have these genetic weaknesses, but interestingly, there's also an emotional side to it, and there's another side to it that tells a lot about the person that are positive things. And I don't know all the ins and outs of that, but Dr. Ellen teaches a lot on that. And then in general, somebody with a polyglandular subtype is weak in their glandular system. So these people have to have support of their adrenals, of their thyroid, pituitary, hypothalamus, pancreas, testes, or ovaries. That part of the system, it has a genetic disposition or tendency to be weak in their glandular system. This is called a mild polyglandular, so there's just a few of the lacuna, as opposed to this one who was clearly polyglandular. But this one has enough. She said if there's 3 or more, you can consider it polyglandular. If there's 3 or more of these lacuna. The pupil border. So the pupil ties to the central nervous system. 28,000 approximately nerves tied to the central nervous system. Your pupil is directly tied to your brain and to your spine. Okay, so if you look at the pupil here, if there's damage or injury to the spinal cord, the pupil of the eye is connected to the spinal cord with 28,000 nerves, it will show up in the pupil of the eye. There will be a flattening of the eye. So lumbar spine, thoracic spine, TS, cervical spine, right? So if that person has damage in their cervical spine, their pupil can be flattened in that part of their pupil that relates to that. Sacrum's down at the bottom. And then when we get to the collarette, there's something called a collarette, which we'll talk about. That's actually tied to the autonomic nervous system, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system, over 1 million nerves. So the whole eye is connected by nerves to every part of the body. And that's the important part to understand. That's why you can see everything in the eye, because there's nerves corresponding to every part of the human body through the eye. So this is a flattened pupil on this side right here. So you see that clear flattening on that pupil? So that means that person has had damage done to their cervical spine. Their neck area, they have had some type of an injury or an accident or, potentially, or just degeneration. There's some type of damage to their cervical spine. Here's what shows how the spine connects to all the organs. We know that through chiropractic. Legal wording, I think this is important for us. Of course, we don't diagnose disease, just like with everything. This is an imbalance. There's an issue. You have a tendency to this because of your genetics. It's not telling somebody they have XYZ named illness, because we don't know that. So why would you say that? But we assess areas that are strong and areas that are potentially deficient. We teach them about physiological mechanisms that apply to their situation, offer information and options known to be beneficial. Dietary change, lifestyle change, herbs, exercise, etc. We just make suggestions. You guys know that, but we'll mention it. There's a little more information on that. We always ask permission to look into somebody's eyes. They say eyes are the window to the soul. Eyes are a very personal thing for people. So she's big on the reverence of actually looking at somebody's eyes. It's a big deal to look in somebody's eyes. So asking permission, and a lot of times what is good to do is take an initial look in somebody's eye and then just ask them some questions. You see a pupil flattened up there, you could say, hey, did you have any spinal injuries? You can see things in the eye and immediately start asking them questions. They'll be like, oh yeah. So it's pretty neat. When we look into another person's eyes, we should look with reverence, honor, and respect. So how is iridology used? Preventative therapies based on genetic predispositions. So for example, if they have a genetic marking in the heart area, suggestion can be made to avoid a diet high in fat and salt, make sure they have a good weight, they're exercising, herbs that are traditionally good for the heart like hawthorn or jogulin or some of our favorite herbs for the heart. All red fruits and foods are good for the heart. Cut open a pomegranate, it looks like 4 chambers of a heart, right? God's a cool designer. So we make those recommendations based on what we see, but obviously if we see a genetic marking in the heart, that person very well may have no issues with their heart. And we don't want to alarm somebody to think they have a problem with their heart. However, when you find out that grandma and mom and dad all had heart problems, and you can say, yeah, it's showing up there, but you can take care of yourself and you don't have to have heart problems. That's the key. That's why this is so powerful. That's why this information is so powerful. So here's the Iridology chart. You guys have this. Some of you have it. I mean, here's another one because I got it right up here on the screen. We're going to go over this in more detail, but that's the pupil. This is the iris. And in a little bit, we'll go through each of these markings, but just you can clearly see how every single gland, organ, and system of the body is represented in the eye. You know, some are larger than others, but it's literally like from the top down, which the top is the head. You come around to the side, you got thyroid, breast, lung, on down to the liver, right down to the kidney. I mean, it's the eye is representative from the top down and also from the inside out. So we'll go over that in just a minute. But this is Bernard Jensen's picture, and Dr. Ellen updated it with her 25 years of research. This is the most current and accurate picture that we know of looking into the human body through the eye. There's a lot of charts that have been made. So this one was 1886. This is German language. That, I'm guessing, means lung. I don't know German, but this is in 1886. This isn't new. This information isn't new. This is a chart by an ancient culture found in Chile. You see a foot down here. You see brain tissue up here. You see a lung right here at 9 o'clock. And you see the lung over here at 3 o'clock, which is accurate to the current picture. You can see the intestines right here around the pupil. You see the intestine. Those look like intestines. You see an ear. You see an eye, nose, mouth right here. Okay? So cultures learned this and knew this hundreds of years ago. God wants to be discovered. A reaction field is an area of the iris that a specific organ is reflected in or reacting upon. So we would not say a sign at 3 o'clock in the iris is the heart. The heart is not in the iris. We would say the reaction field is at 3 o'clock in the left iris. So in other words, because of the nerve connections, it's showing a response based on the nervous connection into the eye. This is where the heart reaction field is. It's about right at 3 o'clock. You can see that in the pictures you guys have. So that's a lacuna, okay, and that's again a genetic predisposition to have a weakness in their heart area. Does not mean they have any issues whatsoever with their heart right now, but potentially, what's powerful and important to understand about iridology is if a person does not take care of themselves, and they don't live a good lifestyle, and they eat the standard American diet, these are the types of things that can show up first. And we know with the heart, that's something we don't want to mess around with. I won't go over that. We look at the eye like a clock. So noon, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay? We look at it like a clock. And that's how we point things out. And what we have is we have eye pictures that we're blowing up of clients, and we have a chart that goes over top of it that is that has the lines in it like a clock, and you can literally see to the pinpoint where where the markings are, so that you can determine what's going on. Going to skip that. Iris zones. So the pupils in the center. The first zone, number 1, is stomach. That's your digestion. So the way that made sense to me when I learned this is think about how we digest food. Okay, we eat food, goes into our stomach. That's zone 1. Zone 2, where does food go after our stomach? Intestines, right? So that's zone 2. That's the intestinal tract. That zone 1 and 2 is called the nutritive zone. It's also called the stomach zone or the digestive zone. As you go out to 3, where does food go after it goes from the intestines? It goes into our blood. Okay, so blood, lymph, and then it also hits our hormonal system, adrenals, pituitary, pancreas, because that's where nutrients are transformed and distributed throughout the body, is through the blood. So we're going through the digestive process here. Then it goes into the muscles. That's zone 4. Nutrients go into the muscles. And then zone 5 is the bones. Zone 6 is the detoxification zone. It's the lymphatic zone, is zone 6. So we do digestion, assimilation, utilization of nutrients, and then we start to detox. And the lymph is the waste disposal system of the body. So that's zone 6. That's detoxification. It also hits the liver and the urogenital tract, right? Because that's part of the elimination system. And then 7, the outside, is the elimination zone, the final elimination zone, which is the skin. So we've talked about skin issues. Ideally, everything's handled through liver, lymph, kidneys, etc. But if those organs are taxed or overworked or congested, then stuff is going to come out through the skin, because the body has to rid itself of toxins no matter what to stay alive. Okay, so that's the zones. This little squiggly around your eye, your little squiggly around your eye, is called your collarette. The collarette is what's connected to the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system, the entire rest of your nervous system of your body. This is inside the digestive zone. So this zone 1 is the stomach, and zone 2 is the intestines, all within the collarette. So that's the digestive zone. This is just color coding on your chart. The stomach zone's green, then beige for digestion, humeral zone, think blood. Muscular, bone is gray, lymph is light blue, and the skin is dark blue. Okay, so constitution. This is how resistant people are to disease, how well they're going to, or fast they might heal based on their resistance to disease. You can rate it from a 1 to a 10. We don't really do that. Density, how dense the fibers are, that's how resilient the person is, based on how dense those fibers are. So remember, those neurogenic type was the strong, tight, woven fibers, strong constitution. So the denser the fibers, the tighter the weave, the stronger a person will be. So what's interesting, what you find with these types of people sometimes is they go, I'm actually one of them, they go, million miles an hour, do anything to keep going. They have a lot to accomplish and a lot to get done, but they don't take time for themselves, or take time to stop, or take time to rest, or take time to relax. And they can develop illness or sickness because you can't go forever a million miles an hour. But if they actually stop and take time to heal and relax, they actually can repair and heal very quickly. Whereas somebody with a weaker resiliency or a weaker density might struggle more, might have to do all the right things all the time, and still, maybe struggle a little bit. So it depends on their density. So this is a dense, tight weave. This is a loose weave. So I want you to see the difference. See how those fibers are all really tight together? And by the way, another fascinating thing about the fibers in the eyes, every single one of these fibers is a blood vessel. These are actually blood vessels.
So is that the collarette on that person?
This is the collarette. It's the squiggly line.
And that's different from the lacuna?
Correct. Lacunae are these little abnormalities
Okay.
in the eye.
They can be inside the collarette.
Yes, and they can be inside the collarette. See, these are inside the collarette. These lacunae are inside the collarette.
Everyone has a collarette.
Everyone has a collarette. I mean, I don't know if it's in the training, but they can be thick, they can be thin, or there can be almost kind of none. Like, it can be really hard to see a person's collarette.
So it seems
Yep.
like the collar looks similar to that daisy thing that you showed us before.
The daisy petal?
Mm-hmm. How do you see that?
Well, that person just happened to have a lot of a lot of those were actually outside of the collarette. They can be inside or outside the collarette. If they're inside the collarette, they're the stomach and nutritive zone. It's in the stomach and the intestines. That all points to digestion problems.
Okay.
Always points to digestive issues,
Interesting.
because that's where that's that zone.
Gotcha.
But when the lacunae get outside the collarette, now you're starting to hit the heart and the lungs and the breast and the liver and the kidneys and the other organs. Yep.
Okay.
So this is a loose weave. See, they don't have the tight fibers. They're very loose. Lots of little dark areas, loose fibers, and this is a lowered resilience. Okay, so this person might have to, work harder, to restore their health potentially, because they're just not as resilient. This brown eye has very tight, you can't even see any looseness in that one. Super, super tight, resilient.
Lots of lacunas.
Yep, and polyglandular, quite a few lacunas. Yep. And anxiety tetanic. See the rings? Okay, prone to anxiety and stress and worry and shading from light to dark. It's called, the easiest way to describe it is kind of a irritated area or a weakened area. I'll give you an example here. See how the fibers are a little bit. It's a fine eye, but you can see how these are really tight and still kind of blue, right? Let's just think of the shading or the color, but it's kind of blue and still tight. Right here, it's starting to weaken. There's a little more darkness showing up, a little blackness under there, because the fibers are a little weaker and starting to separate a little bit. That's a weakness in that area of the body. So real quick on the history of iridology. How am I doing on time? Oh, okay. Eyes have been drawn all throughout history. Iris actually means rainbow. Pretty fascinating. Iris is Greek for rainbow. And it dates back more than 6,000 years. Practiced in China. Hippocrates actually did iridology. And I wonder if it's got... I just want to share how it started because it's pretty interesting. These are some of the guys that pioneered it. Most of them were from Europe. Pexley. Yeah, this guy right here, 1822 to 1911. He was credited for the true discovery of iridology. He found an owl, and when he went to release the owl broke its leg, and he had to care for the owl. And he noticed a marking appear on the owl's eye after the owl broke his leg. And he actually went on to become a doctor, and he started looking at thousands of people. And he found that every time somebody had a heart issue, it showed up in this part of the eye. Every time somebody had a kidney issue, it was showing up in this part of the eye. And he started to chart it. And so that's kind of how it started. So we can end there. That's a good little introduction to iridology. What questions do you have? What maybe I did not cover that might have been some basic information?
I had a question. Is there a difference in the eye? Can you tell a difference between acute and just a genetic disposition? Is there ever a...
I'm not sure if I understand.
If it's a present...
body.
Yeah. If there's a present manifestation versus this is a genetic disposition.
Yeah, I mean, most of it is genetics. We didn't get into some of the other things that can appear. Pigments appear. Coloring appears. So this is one of the reasons why somebody might be born with blue eyes, but it doesn't look blue anymore, when they're older because pigments start showing up because of issues going on in their body. Coloring starts showing up. We didn't see any really good pictures or examples of it, but you know, we go over colors, and people have pigments that are certain colors, and they have in the digestive zone can be all colored, a certain color. If it's yellow, like a straw yellow, that's kidney issues. If it's an orangish color, that's pancreas issues. People have potentially diabetes in their family, blood sugar issues, craving sweets all the time. If it's brown, dark, almost rust colored, it's liver issues and liver congestion. And so yeah, that can show something going on right now. So yeah, I don't want to give a percentage because I'd be totally making it up. But if I made up a percentage, I'd say your eye is 80% genetics and 20% kind of what's going on right now.
Okay.
Because you can see some clear things going on right now, especially in the sclera. When you look in the whites of the eyes, you can see blood vessels that are stained there because of circulation problems. You can see what's called a pinguecula, which is where it's like a fatty blob. It's a yellow fatty blob, which shows liver congestion. Your body's not fully digesting and breaking down fats, and it's starting to form in your eyes.
And the trauma fork.
And the trauma forks, which is just the blood vessels, but they form into a fork, and they're actually pointing at an organ or a gland in the body. That's a damaged area. Yeah. Yep. Yep. So when you heal those, you heal your liver, you heal damaged parts of your body, your sclera, the whites of your eyes can clear up. I mean, we know that. We see things in people's eyes kind of come and go. But the yellowing of the eyes is jaundice. And so yeah, there's a few.
Okay. Will you talk about the genetic components in the next generation?
Thank you. So one of the most important things to understand is that our medical system believes that we are, I hate to use this word, but I don't know a better word to use. Tell me if there's a better one, but a victim of genetics. So in other words, mom had it, grandma had it, well, you're going to have it. And what that, to me, I feel like what that does a lot of times with people is it kind of gives them a pass to not work on their health. Because I'm just going to get this anyway. I mean, my mom and dad had heart disease. I'm going to get it, so I just as well eat fried foods because there's nothing I can do about it. And I see that with people. I see people be like, oh, it's genetic, and they haven't made any changes because, well, there's nothing they can do about it. Well, the truth is it's the opposite. We have made the wrong choices from generation to generation, and we have gotten weaker and weaker as a culture. We see our kids sick now that weren't sick before. But God is a healer, and He's always available if we choose Him. And so what we do see is, even though if we see lacuna or different genetic weaknesses in somebody's eye in a current person, if that person takes care of their health and takes care of their body and supports that organ or that area of weakness, their children can be born without those markings. So in other words, the truth is that if we follow God and turn to God and choose things of God to heal our bodies, we can change our genetics, which you never hear about that in the medical field. And so I hate to say it, but I feel like one of the reasons is they want you to believe there's nothing you can do about your issues, so you just as well take this blood pressure medication the rest of your life. You just as well take aspirin the rest of your life. You just as well take cholesterol medication the rest of your life because it's in your family. Now you're taking a toxic, man-made petrochemical drug that's destroying your body because you're afraid of your genetics. Now again, we might have weakness, but we can overcome that. And really that's our heart, is like to choose God in our generation in every area of our life, nutrition being one that hasn't been talked about a lot, and change future generations, change our children so that they're stronger and they're more resilient.
That is
Proof of that's in the picture.
in the next generation.
In the next generation.
That you can see that they
Yes.
genetically.
Yes, you won't see at least what we learned, she formed IPA, the International Iridology Practitioners Association. She's got hundreds of practitioners all around the world taking pictures of eyes, and you don't really see genetics change in a person's lifetime. You can see changes. You can see lightening and color changes and some variations of things, but the actual deformity, defects, lacuna, those types of things, they do not change in a person's lifetime. But you can change them for your children. So that's really key and yes, important to understand. Thank you.